So let's jump right in with the first one from Arnab Mukherjee. I really hope I've said that okay, Arnab. Arnab is one of our Chronicles Tifosi Patreon supporters. Thank you so much, Arnab, for supporting the show.
Hi.
Arnab has a few questions regarding Brahim Diaz as a Real Madrid fan. He has been following his spell in Milan for over a year now, and he says, I think he's grown very quickly. Do you think Diaz will be better off staying at Milan than going back to Madrid? Arnab does think so, because Milan plays without a traditional number 10. Arnab follows up with the question, do you think he would be good value for money for Milan, assuming the purchase clause is about 30 million euros? And finally, Arnab says that he believes that Diaz is a great player, but in the wrong era. If he was born about 10 to 15 years ago, when teams could afford to have a number 10 type player without much defensive duty, he could have become a superstar. Sorry for paraphrasing a bit, Arnab. It was quite a long email, so I just tried to cut it down a little bit. But I think I've got all your big questions in there. Mina, what do you think?
Firstly, Madrid's my favourite city, so I tend to have watched a lot of Atletico and Real Madrid. I always try to catch up with it. I went to university there, so I'm very attached to the city. Do I think he's a Real Madrid player, and is it worth for him to come back? I don't think he's going to find space in Real Madrid for several reasons. I think that one of the most important things that I think I associate to Real Madrid is a winning mentality, you know? They're very good about spotting young talent. Obviously, we've seen Vinicius Jr., even that big summer in which they spent all their money. They bought Marcelo at a young age. They obviously, you know, Benzema, Higuain, and then they all sort of matured at the right time and started just winning relentless Champions League. Obviously, having somebody like Ronaldo just makes it that much easier. And then Modric and Kroos in your midfield. But it is that winning mentality. It is what Zinedine Zidane used to say, in the sense that when I used to walk in when he was a kid, he said that everyone around me was better technically. The only difference was that I knew I would make it. And so it is that level of that mental fortitude that got him to go from Bordeaux to Juventus to obviously then Real Madrid and be a winner everywhere, including for obviously the national team. And with Brahim Diaz, he's 22, so I think to myself, I don't want to be too harsh on him. But nowadays, you see people like Jude Bellingham, who is so young, but has that mental fortitude. And you see that with Vlahovic, for example, that I don't see necessarily in Lautaro Martinez, and I don't necessarily see in Brahim Diaz. Again, against Salernitana, there was lots of criticism aimed at him because there was just no courage on the ball. Physically, sometimes I feel like he doesn't compete. He can be overwhelmed in a match. He is not somebody to ever say to you, give me the ball and I'm just going to take care of it. Whereas there are other players who will do that and maybe fail at it, but they will show the courage necessary to do that, you know, like a Barella or a Federico Chiesa, for example. And that's what worries me about him. You're right in the sense that trequartistas are dying out and not many teams play with a number 10, because we do have 9.5s. We do have your Benzemas and your, I don't know, Dzekos and Martinez and players who understand how to come back, or especially like Dybala, who will be your centre-back if needs be, and then will progress the ball forward. But trequartistas are dying out. And I do understand that maybe he would have done more, but where I struggle with him is inconsistency, but I don't see it as being youthful inconsistency. I see it as he's a little bit scared sometimes. And I think the very best players show that from an early age, that they are happy to go up for the challenge. I think on the ball, I think his vision, his creativity, his talent is very big club. It is very Milan. It is very Real Madrid. But my worry with him will always be in the sense of how much up for a challenge and a duel he really is. And when the game is slowly dripping away or falling away, can he be the man who takes charge or at least helps catapult the team forward? Rafael Leao, for example, is a youngster, but you do see that happen from him on occasion. Sandro Tonali is a youngster, but he always feels he can make the difference. I don't feel Brahim Diaz has that within him. 30 million is way too much to spend on him for Milan, especially considering their finances. So that's difficult. I would like to see him there and to stay there because I think he has the creativity to make a difference. But I think, unfortunately, for Real Madrid, I think it might be a step too far for him.
Yeah, so my understanding of the financials of it is it's Milan can actually sign him for, so actually a little bit less than that. It's around 21 million euros, but then Madrid in
Quite a bit
theory
less
have the
than.
controriscata of being able to buy him back if they decide they want him after all for like 26 or 27 million euros. So it's one of these sort of slightly odd deal structures that Madrid seem to enjoy doing these days with particularly with Italian clubs. It reminds me of the Morata deal, where it's like you can loan him for a couple of years and there's an option for you to buy him, but there's another option which means we can have him back if we decide we don't like that as much. So the power is with Madrid on this one in terms of if they really wanted him to end up back there, then he could. I'm inclined to agree with Mina about whether or not he'd find space there. And I think the question isn't necessarily about whether he'd find space, it's whether or not they would consider his value to be higher than those figures. And perhaps they would decide that. But he's been a bit of a, I don't know. I think he's certainly a very talented footballer, and I wouldn't for a second say otherwise. But I don't feel like in the last 12 months I've seen him progress in the way that I've seen some other young players at Milan do it. I look at, and I know I have probably talked about it a lot recently already, but I look at Rafael Leao and the progress he's making, and it's not perfect, it's not linear, but I really feel like he's on this trajectory going somewhere really special. And Diaz, who on the surface is a little bit similar because they're both dribblers, they're both players you want to get on the ball and let them run at opposing defences. I'm not yet seeing that big step forward. In fact, if anything, I feel like this season has been a bit more hot and cold than he was last season, really.
He started well.
Yeah, but that's why I say hot and cold rather than just not good. I don't know. I feel like he's been a bit just not consistently moving. Yeah, in the way that I wanted to, which isn't to write him off as a footballer either. I think he's got some really generous technical gifts, and that could lead him somewhere. I want to also be just like a bit of a language nerd with the trequartista thing, because it's one of those Italian terms that we translate to mean number 10, because that's the best approximation of it. I mean, the tre quarti in the end is the 3/4, which just means like an area of the pitch. And if anything, I think Italian teams are playing more than ever on the tre quarti. It's just that they're doing it with wide players often. So actually, it's often your right and left wing in a 4-3-3 that are your, in effect, your trequartista. They're the ones who are on the 3/4 for you. But I agree that the number 10 is, I think it's been a while, really. The last really true number 10 at the sort of top end of Italian football, I might have been Wesley Sneijder, who was a true number 10 who was sitting in that pocket and getting to
should have won the Ballon d'Or.
Hang out back there. Sorry?
Should have won the Ballon d'Or.
Should have done. I agree.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with you there. It's just that he has so much talent, and when you see him on the ball, and if he's not disturbed too much, then I think that he can give a lot. But it is the inconsistencies, and I'm not seeing the progression. But he is so smart on the ball, and he has such great vision. I just wish that if he could just have a little bit more of a fight within him on a mental level, I think that, I don't know. But maybe we'll see him break out next year if he does indeed stick around.